If I had a word to describe what HPTC does, I would definitely say impactful, because if you look at what HPTC does, they're going out to all these different national parks around the country. They're helping to preserve national park structures.
I think of ourselves as a design-build contractor within the Park Service. From start to finish, we come out and we work on the technical details. We work with contractors if required. We write the specifications, and we provide the day labor to do the majority of the project and execute the work.
Allowing the Park Service to get some of their most unique, difficult to scope historic structures repaired and preserved for the next generation.
We have carpentry, woodcrafting, masonry, architecture, and PM branches. There's no other center within the National Park Service that can do that. At the same time, provide the training that we provide.
And we train and develop people that will go on to be leaders and future tradesmen in the National Park Service.
I think the best part about HPTC is the way we come together to finish a project.
We work for national parks, national historic sites, national forest,
DOD, Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, federal, local, state governments, and nonprofits.
Call us and say, hey, we have this project, can you help us? And we do it in a way that's collaborative.
Everybody's working towards one common goal.
And I think that's really special.
It's really an elite group of the National Park Service that actually, get to go to these places and work on these structures.
You really get to continue the craftsmanship of people that have been doing this way longer than you've been alive, and continuing down that path for history, it definitely means a lot.
Part of what we do is use traditional skills, so we're not only preserving the buildings, we're also preserving the actual craft of doing the work on some of the structures, which I think is equally as important.
I'm all about saving buildings like this one that otherwise might not survive on their own.
Do what we can do to save the structures for future generations to enjoy and learn about our rich history of the United States.
It's remarkable. I mean, the history in this country and the things that the Park Service preserves and is taking care of is phenomenal. It should be really valued.
Working in the National Park Service, these are sites and projects that the American people have deemed to be the most important structures and landscapes to our nation's history. And to be able to give back in that way of public service is a really unique opportunity. Really, I think, brings a lot of value to the work that we do.
It's the epitome, it's the essence, it's the gold standard in my opinion.
Okay. Tom is going to try to take over from me, and I think he's doing a good job at that. And Tom, you gave me a really nice bio, so let me read it.
Okay.
Before you start out. Tom Vitanza, AIA, NCARB, is the Senior Historical Architect with the National Park Service Historic Preservation Training Center. Originally from New York's Hudson Valley, he earned his B.Arch at Virginia Tech. Tom coordinates the HPTC Historic Architecture team, whose focus is to work with national park units to manage, document, improve, and make useful and accessible a variety of nationally significant historic structures. His work with the National Park Service and its partners have preserved scores of historic structures, including canals, blockhouses, lighthouses, Civil War era ships, coastal fortifications, cemetery monuments, historic farmsteads, and many vernacular houses, churches, schools, engineering structures, and ruins. Tom and the HPTC have used NCPE for about 20 years, resulting in approximately 30 internships, some of whom are now employed by the National Park Service. So Tom, take it away.
Yes, hi everyone. Julie, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you.
Great. Well, and hopefully you can see the PowerPoint too.
Yes.
That's a great video. One of the things it doesn't really express is how the Historic Preservation Training Center fits into the National Park Service. And we often have to explain, even to our own colleagues, that yes, indeed, we are a unit of the National Park Service. And our primary mission is to train National Park Service maintenance employees to understand the differences between doing historic preservation of historic resources in the Park Service and contemporary or traditional construction that they may have learned either in high school or doing an apprenticeship with a contractor. So you saw several of our craftsmen there, craftspeople from our various sections. The HPTC is composed of 5 basic teams, as our superintendent mentioned. We have a team which focuses on fine carpentry or woodcrafting. We have another team which focuses more on exterior carpentry. We have another team which focuses mostly on masonry structures. Then we have a project management team which helps parks manage contracts. And so you have people with expertise in project management there, often with a certification from the Project Management Institute. And then we also have the Historic Architecture Program. Our team consists of 4 architects, 2 of whom are licensed and 2 of whom are working towards licensure, but we basically try to help any national park unit or partner do advanced planning for projects so that by the time they complete the financial requirements of the National Park Service to receive funding to do a program, they actually know what they want to do. We help them get shovel ready in the current lingo. One of the programs that HPTC is doing right now is called the Traditional Trades Apprenticeship Program. You can Google that and find out what that's all about. That's for folks that are interested in getting some hands-on experience at introductory levels, and you may not have had that experience otherwise, but it's an entry-level program through partner organizations to get your feet wet doing some basic traditional trades, and it offers a lot of good basic training, including safety training in terms of what HPTC will do. As Julie mentioned, we have interns every summer. This summer, we are extremely pleased that we were able to actually fulfill our internship with 4 young folks that are now working with us. Catherine mentioned how they had to postpone the HABS internships due to the virus, but our partner in this summer's work is Arlington National Cemetery. They're the Department of the Army, and they were quite insistent that we try to manage this internship program this year. They had several needs which were urgent to them. So we were able to bring our interns on board June 1st, and they'll be working with us till the end of August, and then one will be extended until the end of September. Our team is basically broken into 2. We have 2 young women doing conservation work at Arlington National Cemetery. This slide just shows a little bit of what they're doing in terms of trying to do rust reduction, staining removal at the plaza in front of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers. This plaza is heavily soiled due to the boots of the old guard who pass back and forth several times a day, hundreds of times a day, I should say. And they've incurred some staining there, which one of the tests for this summer was to determine if it would be possible to reduce that staining to a certain extent. This slide shows some of the test panels that Jennifer and Katie have done. Jennifer and Katie over here to the right with a barrage of equipment and materials that they're using. And the photo on the left shows some of the tests that they've done to try to remove the rust staining, iron oxide staining from the granite plaza. And interestingly enough, because of the history of the old guard, the cemetery doesn't want this completely removed back to the native stone. They feel that the linear pattern of the rust staining there is part of the history of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers, because the old guard is there 24/7 and they do their rounds, and it's their boots, the iron cleats, which create this iron oxide staining at the plaza. So a happy medium has been found, and I believe they are working on doing some projects there to get to a level of appearance which is acceptable. Our other two interns are focusing more on asset inspection and condition assessment at the cemetery. This involves going out and looking at a couple of hundred memorial locations within Arlington National Cemetery, including the Kennedy Grave Complex, which is actually made up of 3 separate burial sites. And it's a modern structure. The earliest parts date from the 60s. Most of it dates from the 1980s. But there are some issues there, including issues from the cemetery's irrigation system, which causes specific area flooding, as you're seeing in this slide here. And this does not necessarily contribute to the long-term preservation of this site at the cemetery. So besides looking for trouble spots such as this, we're also doing the every 2-year annual inspection and condition assessment of all the various component features of the cemetery. This is another element of the cemetery. There's a boundary wall all the way around the cemetery. There are numerous gates between it and either the exterior world or their immediate neighbor to the north, which is Fort Myer. And some of the gates are older ceremonial gates, such as this one, the white granite and the Seneca Creek sandstone wall is what I'm speaking of. You can see how modern automatic mechanical gates have been unceremoniously deposited here in front of these historic gates. And Fort Myer has constructed their own gate on the other side. So while we attempt to clear up this hodgepodge of how many gates do you actually need in any given opening, we are more focused on what is the condition of the historic Seneca Creek boundary wall, the stone coping, and the pillars on either side. I believe the historic gates have been removed from this location and are in storage until something is figured out with the automatic gates. Part of Porter and Allie's work is looking for the good, the bad, and the ugly, as they say. And some of the ugly is, again, some issues with the cemetery's irrigation system here. The horticultural department and the engineering department don't always see eye to eye in terms of what the mission is. The horticultural people will say it's having a green lawn and keeping the vegetation in good condition. And the cultural resource folks will say, well, what's the point of all that if the memorials and monuments are being damaged and destroyed by constant soaking with water and vegetation overgrowing? Here you can see the bottom left is Pierre L'Enfant's grave marker at the cemetery. It's right in front of the Arlington House, which is managed by the National Park Service. The boundary between the cemetery and the National Park Service is actually that row of black bollards with the chain swags. But Pierre L'Enfant's marker is unfortunately experiencing some deterioration due to weathering and water once again. And Porter and Allie's job is to go out there using an inventory form we have, which I'm not showing a photo of, and documenting the conditions. And slide above is actually a hole in a wall of a building, which is a Seneca Creek, which has been pointed with Portland cement, which is not a good thing because it's harder than the stone. And here you can see how the stone has actually deteriorated, leaving the cement behind. Here's the team, day 3 in the cemetery, all practicing our social distancing and wearing our masks, but they are spread out throughout the cemetery on a daily basis, working on a variety of different things. We have a very intense summer schedule, and we hope to accomplish a lot of work by the end of the summer. I'm going to just quickly jump ship, and this kind of ties into Catherine Lavoie's presentation about the Historic American Building Survey. They are partners with us on this project at Manassas National Battlefield, which is to do a historic structure report for the Mary Jane Dogen House. Here's a photograph from 1902 showing the house, which was built in 1868. So it is a post-war structure, but it's associated with a significant personality at the battlefield, and so it will be preserved. This is a building that just came into the National Park Service in January of 2019, so we're really just getting our feet wet. This shows it in 1932. The building to the right is a different building. That's the Lucinda Dogen House, and the building to the left is the Mary Jane Dogen House. That's the subject of our project. And Prior to it coming into the National Park Service, the Historic Preservation Training Center architecture team was asked by the park to come out and take a look at it in advance of it coming into the Park Service. So in 2010, it had just finished being used by the, there's a cemetery right there as their admin building. And you can see how it's had numerous additions over time and was clad in vinyl siding, which doesn't really help us do our research that we need to do. By 10 years later, the National Park Service, within several months of obtaining ownership of the building, has removed the vinyl siding and exposed the original wood clapboarding to the building. All the Tyvek that's up on the building is basically just covering openings in the wall construction so that we're trying to keep the weather out during the interim. The Historic American Building Survey team has come out and done LiDAR scanning of the entire structure. One of the benefits is they can produce these elevational renders, which give you a lot of information on the building, which doesn't necessarily show up in photography or even in photogrammetry. So here you can very clearly indicate the outline of the front porch, which was removed at some point in the 1970s, we believe. And it shows that the building is not completely symmetrical, which talks to the evolution of the floor plan a little bit. Then, of course, we go from the LiDAR scan into traditional line drawings, which this is a very preliminary and extremely pixelated image, which I tried to manipulate into the PowerPoint, but eventually we get a high quality line drawing with measurements and annotations, which will go into the historic structure report to explain to the park how the building has changed over time. These two photographs show also us removing all the 20th century renovation materials from the interior. The upper slide shows, these two images are showing the same fireplace opening. In the upper image, they are concealed behind a bathroom wall that was added at some point, and you can still see the tub over there. And hidden underneath everything, and you can see it in the lower slide, are some original log joists which make up part of the floor framing. And those have been dated through dendrochronology to the 1820s. So there are pieces of an older building hidden within the post-war building. And here is one of our interns, Porter, measuring, creating a floor plan of the interior of this one room where the plywood's been removed and the logs have been revealed, with an HPTC architect, Jen Leeds. And this is prior to Habs coming back and re-scanning the interior so they could incorporate the locations of the logs into some of the floor plans. This is, again, unfortunately not very high quality image of the floor plans, which now show the location of the log floor joists in a portion of the building and helps to explain the overall evolution of the building. So that is my PowerPoint, and I am available for questions, unless I don't know if we have time to show the hair fly-through, but there is a recently produced hair fly-through of the Mary Jane Dogen house. It's easy to see it. Just Google it and you'll find it.
Wonderful. We do have a question, Tom.
Okay.
How does climate change impact the work or training done by HPTC? For example, in more coastal areas being impacted by flooding, saltwater intrusion, or erosion. How does HPTC address these impacts?
Well, so normally HPTC is not brought in to address large-scale environmental issues. We do deal with it on a building-by-building or structure-by-structure level by keeping the building in as good a condition as possible, because one of the National Park Service responses to climate change, especially the increased amount of extreme storms and very intense rainfall events, is keeping the historic fabric in good condition. If the historic fabric is not in good condition, you will often have buildings which are damaged by high winds or intense rainfall, such as gutter system failures or foundations which allow water into the building, windows and doors. Some of the masonry forts that we deal with along the coast have built-in historically systems that deal with rainwater, which unfortunately have fallen into disrepair through the years. So we are actively working with several coastal fortifications down along the Gulf Coast and out into the Dry Tortugas by pretty much bringing these systems back online, because they were engineered to deal with hurricanes and they can still deal with them. And it helps address the issue of too much water all at once. As far as erosion goes, in some extreme instances, and Cape Hatteras Lighthouse is the most visible of all of these, is we will move a structure back from a failing cliff edge. And that was an extremely detailed project at Cape Hatteras Lighthouse and Light Station. And the Historic Preservation Training Center was not involved in any way in that project, other than helping to get the lighthouse into good condition prior to its movement. And also we have gone back and done some work on the lighthouse since it's been relocated to its new foundation, such as working to preserve and repair the historic interior cast iron stair, which goes from the bottom all the way up. And actually HABS has a great fly through on Cape Hatteras Lighthouse too. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into how we're dealing with climate change.
Okay, great. I don't see any more questions, at least right at this